them. You asked the question.
Yeah.
I'm just providing you.
And I know you know the.
This should have been settled at the beginning of August, one way or another, so that we have plans ready to open school.
And how do these kids get there?
No, we're not working on the contract. We're working on reopening schools, and that turns out to be a load of hospital.
What if the residents, the taxpayers, held their taxes until you get your act together? Don't pay your bloody tax. Why should you? They're not providing any service. They haven't got their act together.
The problem is the money comes from the state. It doesn't come from the state.
Why is the state paying $14,000 per student enrolled for Zoom class?
That's right.
It's 14 grand for a Zoom class.
And can we get it cheaper from India? I know that gets the teachers red hot mad. The teachers really want to be back in school. The teachers really want their traditional classroom back with all their kiddos in front of them.
Yeah.
That's what they really, really want to do. And the union's going like, well, you can stay home in your slippers and you don't have to go into work. The union's, to my end, is talking to these students and tonight, don't forget, there's a standout tonight. There's a standout. Yes, come to this. See how many, I bet you they have less than 100 teachers out there tonight because nobody's coming from Concord, New Hampshire. The woman who works in Connecticut's not coming. The gal who works in Rhode Island, who lives in Rhode Island, she's not coming. People who live in Concord, Massachusetts are not coming. Just the teachers that live in Lowell are going to show up at the meeting time. Out-of-towners, they're going to try to Zoom in for the standout.
How much empathy do you think the general public has as they're driving home from work and they don't have all these things, the people standing outside with the signs saying things they're saying? When you're driving by and you're considered essential, non-essential, I don't know the answer, but you're forced to go to work every day and you haven't done anything, and you see someone stand up there getting $14,000 for a student, and they're standing out there and they can't agree on the simplest things.
This is why people have less and less respect for their government.
Parents, frustrated. You're seeing some of our other essential workers, such as police and fire unions, who are also, they worked throughout this whole thing, and now not only did they work throughout the whole thing, they're being asked. The union's being asked to take anywhere from 3 to 5 furlough days because of budget restrictions, and you have almost like a supervised place to do remote learning.
Do you hear yourself, Jerry? We can do that in an off-site place, but we can't do that at the schools. Do you hear? Do you hear what we're saying?
I'm just telling you what I've heard was being looked at. I'm telling you I agree with them. You asked the question.
Yeah.
I'm just providing you.
And I know you know the.
This should have been settled at the beginning of August, one way or another, so that we have plans ready to open school.
And how do these kids get there?
No, we're not working on the contract. We're working on reopening schools, and that turns out to be a load of hospital.
What if the residents, the taxpayers, held their taxes until you get your act together? Don't pay your bloody tax. Why should you? They're not providing any service. They haven't got their act together.
The problem is the money comes from the state. It doesn't come from the state.
Why is the state paying $14,000 per student enrolled for Zoom class?
That's right.
It's 14 grand for a Zoom class.
And can we get it cheaper from India? I know that gets the teachers red hot mad. The teachers really want to be back in school. The teachers really want their traditional classroom back with all their kiddos in front of them.
Yeah.
That's what they really, really want to do. And the union's going like, well, you can stay home in your slippers and you don't have to go into work. The union's, to my end, is talking to these students and tonight, don't forget, there's a standout tonight. There's a standout. Yes, come to this. See how many, I bet you they have less than 100 teachers out there tonight because nobody's coming from Concord, New Hampshire. The woman who works in Connecticut's not coming. The gal who works in Rhode Island, who lives in Rhode Island, she's not coming. People who live in Concord, Massachusetts are not coming. Just the teachers that live in Lowell are going to show up at the meeting time. Out-of-towners, they're going to try to Zoom in for the standout.
How much empathy do you think the general public has as they're driving home from work and they don't have all these things, the people standing outside with the signs saying things they're saying? when you're driving by and you're considered essential, non-essential, I don't know the answer, but you're forced to go to work every day and you haven't done anything, and you see someone stand up, they're getting $14,000 for a student, and they're standing up there and they can't agree on the
This
simplest
is why
things.
people have less and less respect for their government.
Parents, frustrated. You're seeing some of our other essential workers, such as police and fire unions, who are also, they work throughout this whole thing. And now, not only did they work throughout the whole thing, the union's being asked to take anywhere from 3 to 5 furlough days because of budget restrictions. And you have almost like a supervised place to do remote learning.
Do you hear yourself, Jerry? We can do that in an off-site place, but we can't do that at the schools. Do you hear, do you hear what we're saying?
I'm just telling you what I've heard was being looked at. I'm telling you what I agree with them. You asked the question.
Yeah.
I'm just providing you the answer.
And I know you know the,
This should have been settled at the beginning of August, one way or another, so that we have plans ready to open school.
and how do these kids get there?
No, we're not working on the contract. We're working on reopening schools, and that turns out to be a load of hospital.
What if the residents, the taxpayers, held their taxes until you get your act together? Don't pay your bloody tax. Why should you? They're not providing any service. They haven't got their act together.
The problem there is the money comes from the state, it doesn't come from
No,
the
but
state.
why is the state paying for it?
Thursday. I'm EVELYN THOREN. I am your host for until roughly 8 o'clock, but the first hour is the Dawn Patrol. And Sam Chase is with me this morning as my co-host. Bob Hoey isn't. We wish him well. And, of course, we always have John McDonough that gives his 2 cents worth, but with inflation it may be like 8 cents. And, yeah, we do. I made it like a carrot cake, a type of carrot cake.
That's a vegetable, you know.
Yes, well, there's other stuff in it that I can tell you what's in it that's good for you, that I always toss in. And so we have all kinds of interesting things that we could talk about, but perchance if you've joined us this early, you could text us at 978-808-8200. If you're on Facebook, you can certainly send any comments in via Facebook, or if you have any topics that you think you might want to have our opinion on, then, or if you want to add more information to whatever it is we're talking about, we welcome any kind of communication with those that may be watching. We also want to make sure that everybody knows that this is an unscripted, unedited show. It's live, and we have no monitors. You know, we can predetermine maybe the topics that we'd like to talk about, but when we get here, whatever comes out as long as it's acceptable language.
And
Let's put it that way.
There's no 7-second delay or anything like that.
No, we're live.
Right.
It's what you see is what you get.
Right.
And as you know, currently we have no guest listed this morning, so
Well, maybe somebody will show up, you never know, right?
That's
Happy
true.
Holy Week.
That's right, it is Holy Week.
Yes, today's Maundy Thursday. It used to be something that
It's Holy Thursday.
well, that's what we called it.
Protestants
call it?
call it, Protestants call it Maundy, Maundy, Maundy Thursday.
Never knew that.
Well, now you see, this
Well,
is
you learn something all the
this is an
time.
educational show,
What
isn't
does
it?
Monday mean?
These are your
Monday's
teachers.
Monday. Monday's Monday.
Maundy.
Well, Evelyn, tell us hi Protestant in the room. What's
Well,
going on?
Evelyn's the Sunday school teacher.
Oh,
so
wait
she
Yeah,
a
can
but
tell
I don't think I ever
gonna
was
look it up.
asked. So in order to get
Wowzers.
anything accurate, let me find that out.
See what it says.
Maundy.
It's the same thing, just a different name, John.
Can't see what I'm doing.
Like tomato and tomato?
Exactly.
D-Y.
Okay. I never knew that. What are the Jews called? Because it's like Passover week, right?
Right, well, it's,
Yeah, but Passover was
that's a different,
That's now?
the day. What day was it? Saturday or Sunday? Last
I think it was.
last week.
I think it
I
was,
think
Sa-
it's whole. I think it's
I think it was
Passover.
Saturday,
I don't know though.
Passover. Well, the
Hey,
Seder,
how's the weather outside, kids?
A little
Good.
on the chilly side. It was 37, but it's not snowing and it's not raining.
and the sun was coming up as we came in, so that's nice.
Is it windy?
No, but I saw a weather report this morning at 5 o'clock, and they say the wind is going to pick up today, but it won't be as brisk as it was yesterday. They
You
figured.
might be interested, Sam, that Pam Gardner's back on Channel 7. No, Channel 10.
Pam, I don't think I know her. Pam Gardner?
Oh, yeah, she's very easy on the eyes.
Okay.
Well, you can show a picture if you want.
I like the, I think, I do like the Channel 5 weather, but we also watch Channel 7 frequently, and occasionally 4. I think all the forecasters are pretty good on the three channels in Boston. But I
agree.
I do like 5. I think they have very good weather forecasting.
Well, who's the girl on the weekend? She didn't work last weekend.
Kellyanne Schickalise.
Yeah, she didn't work. I watched Channel 5 deliberately to see Kellyanne, and
Yeah.
she was not on.
She's very attractive.
Yes.
So, Maundy comes from the Latin word mandatum, meaning commandment.
Right.
And it refers to the Jesus command at the Last Supper, which says, I give you that you love one another even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. That's from the book of John 13:34 in the New Testament. And they said that was what the key word was, and it's also known, as you said, Holy Thursday. It depends on where you're coming from. And,
So Farsi can call it Holy Thursday, too?
oh yeah.
Yes.
And so it was the evening where he washed the feet of the
Wonder what the
disciples.
Orthodox call, like the
The what?
Armenian Orthodox and
Well, you can ask your phone.
They would
Greek
call
Orthodox.
it, the Orthodox would call it Holy Thursday. Yeah.
because looking at the outside camera today,
It is
we're to
pretty.
get a new dome. They're re-golding the top.
Where?
Pulling to the screen there.
Oh, I see.
Oh, I see it. Oh.
Right
go.
here.
Re-golding, huh?
You want me to ask my phone what
pretty
was
cool.
that question you had?
Orthodox.
I thought St. Pat's. I'm gonna have to pull this shot
I think
back.
they-
Probably Holy Thursday.
They refer to it as Holy
Yeah.
Week and so
Does.
forth. There isn't much difference between the Orthodox and the Roman.
Now, Orthodox what?
It doesn't matter.
Is it Christian? Is it Greek?
Greek?
They have a different Easter, don't they?
Yeah, but they're
No,
all,
they're the same this year.
well, this year it happens to coincide, but very often.
30% of the time.
It's usually the
different.
next week.
there isn't much, there is very little theological difference between the Orthodox and the Roman churches.
I picked this shot because we got St. Patrick's Church. We have the former St. Jean the Baptist Church. We get Holy Trinity here, and we used to be able to see Transfiguration.
It's the same.
Can't see Transfiguration, so. That's it, kids. That's the shot outside. Back to you guys.
And the other thing was it was it commemorates the institution of communion, the Holy Eucharist,
Right.
because that's when he had it as in the last meal. But they refer to it as Great and Holy Thursday.
That's the main difference between the Catholic and the Protestant churches, is the central focus on the communion.
No, divorce is.
What?
Well, I'm just.
We're talking about Holy Week.
I'm talking about the theological stuff. The main difference in the Catholic Church, you go to Mass and it's always communion, okay? That's the focus of the
Yeah, okay.
service. But most Protestant churches don't focus on communion. You might have communion service once a month.
Really?
Yeah, that's how they do it.
Yeah, it's not every time you go.
So the Catholics and the Episcopalians do communion all the time, okay? But if you're a Congregationalist or a Methodist, you don't do communion every service. You do it maybe once a month. And I'm not sure the Unitarians do it at all. And if you are...
These are interesting
Well,
questions.
if you're a Unitarian, you shouldn't do it because the Unitarians don't believe in the divinity of Christ.
I thought that they encompassed
shouldn't.
everybody.
Yeah, but they don't believe in the divinity of Christ. That's,
Okay, would you explain to the audience what you
okay.
mean by divinity of Christ?
The Catholics and most Protestants believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. So in other words, he was divine, the divinity of Christ, all right?
Okay.
The Unitarians, and you can tell just from the name of the sect, if you're a Unitarian, you don't believe in the Trinity. Catholics, Episcopalians, Methodists, Lutherans believe in the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Or Holy Spirit, they say now. When I was being raised, it was Holy Ghost, right? So which means that Jesus is the Son of God, born of the Virgin Mary, okay? That's the Nicene Creed, all right? And, but the Unitarians don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. The Unitarian belief is closer to the Jewish belief, okay? So the Unitarians, uni meaning one God, Unitarian, whereas Catholics and other Protestants believe in the Trinity, okay? So Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, all right? Unitarians don't believe that. They just believe in God. They believe in God, okay, but they don't think Jesus is the Son of God. That's the difference.
Jesus was just a heck of a guy.
They recognize, well, Jesus actually was a historical figure,
And
okay?
Moses, a heck of a guy.
And Moses is the guy that, you saw the movie, he made the sea go.
Among other things.
And you're a
And-
little too tight on your microphone.
Yeah, that was a wonderful scene in that movie. But so Unitarians don't believe in divinity of
Yeah, I used to
Christ.
love to watch the Ten Commandments and all the
I
special
try
effects. Vivid.
to watch it every year. So I mean, I've probably seen the thing 50 times. I love it. Edward G. Robinson, the bad guy, he's great.
A lot of interesting stuff within that particular.
Yeah, a little too tight on your microphone.
I am.
Yeah.
Sorry.
didn't
So
mean
they
to
do
get-
celebrate. So Unitarian Universalists generally celebrate Easter.
I don't get it.
Just wait. When many congregations, while not explicitly Christian, recognize the holiday as a time of joy, renewal, and reflection, offering incorporating themes of spring, rebirth, and the triumph of love over death. And then it talks a little bit about the services.
But they don't
But
celebrate.
they talk about the symbolism,
They don't celebrate the resurrection.
not the way we do. Easter message of resurrection is often interpreted metaphorically, representing the rebirth of nature, dreams, and hope, or the resurrection of relationships.
But not Jesus.
It doesn't talk about it here.
No, because they don't believe in Jesus as the Son of God.
I gotcha.
I'm going to keep pounding that theme, right?
Yeah, well, everybody can look it up.
Right.
Yeah, but
The
if you
resurrection
watch the TV
narrative-
looking for knowledge, you're doing a good thing, yeah.
Right, the resurrection, the resurrection narrative is often more metaphorical than literal. Many kinds of resurrection can be emphasized. Rebirth of nature, resurrecting dreams and hopes, resurrecting dead relationships.
Resurrecting dead relationships.
And usually, they go with
So
the
you go
Easter
back
egg
to your
hunt.
ex-wife?
I don't know about that.
I wouldn't do that.
Well, I'm just saying, resurrecting,
Some
that's
would.
gonna get president wife ticked off. You go
Some
back to
would. I
ex-wife.
mean, I know people that have gone back and married their ex-spouses again.
And then it says also, most congregations celebrate the Christian holidays, Christmas and Easter. They celebrate the Jewish holidays, Passover and Yom Kippur.
You're talking
and
about
the-
Unitarians.
And the
Okay.
pagan winter solstice among the few.
It's a very small religious sect. Does it give you the numbers? How many are Unitarians in the United States?
No, but I can ask that question.
It's under 200,000.
Okay,
Well,
let's
isn't
see.
that lovely?
Yeah, see what they say.
I will in a minute. What are the main beliefs of Unitarians? The inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our
So
congregations.
are they doing Easter?
They will celebrate Easter, but not the way we do. Which is what I just read prior to this. They celebrate all of the Christian holidays and the Jewish ones and the pagan ones. Well, some of them. Acceptance of one another, encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and there's more. One of the things that I noticed, simply because it was different, is that God is not referred to as He.
That's relatively recent. I
And
mean,
there's other things, and they've changed a lot of the hymns. When it's referred to as a he, they change it.
a lot of the sects have
Music,
done that.
yeah.
The
So what was the question you
The
asked?
United Church of Christ changed their hymnal. The Episcopalians changed their hymnal, okay, to get rid of the gendered language.
What was the other question, though, that he asked, or you asked?
Do they
The
celebrate
number of Unitarians
Okay.
in the United States. I believe it's under 200,000.
Is there a Unitarian church around here?
Yes.
Oh, there's a lot of, there's
You
one
have
in the
one in
center of
you have
Chelmsford.
one in Lowell.
There's one in the center of Chelmsford.
And there's only 200,000?
I
the whole
think
country?
I think it's less. They merged, the Unitarians merged with the Universalists in 1963. And even together, I think it was under 200,000 at that time. So it's a small number of people that belong.
And again, remember, people, I'm asking my telephone.
Yeah, the church, the Unitarian Church in Chelmsford, you know it, John, it's a big white church right in the center of town. That's the Unitarian Church. It's pretty active. I mean,
You are right. You are a wizard.
there's a number of...
211,000.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm wrong. I thought it was under 200, so it's grown.
Adherents. Well, they've been making babies.
It's grown. Okay, there you go.
Adherents. 211,000 adherents. What is an adherent? I gotta look
But
up.
it also says, a survey estimated that 675,000 adults in America broadly identify as Unitarian.
Okay, so what we're talking about is people that actually
An
say
adherent-
they belong and go to the church.
I have never heard this word before, adherent. And
Well, you
it's
know what adhere means. It means to stick to, okay?
someone who supports a particular party, person, or set of
Right.
ideas.
Right.
He was a strong adherent to monetary. Oh boy, there's another wonderful word. I don't know what it is. Back to you guys, thanks.
Yeah, but you know the word adhere. It means to stick to. So
Yeah,
if you adhere to-
monetarism is
yeah,
the next word they toss in there.
right.
You look up this one too, Johnny boy. No, I'm done.
So, yeah. But anyway, this is Holy Week.
I'm not that kind of
That's what
adherent.
started the conversation.
And they said that membership is declining.
Yeah, well, it is in all the churches.
Well, a lot of people think
Well, what
they're
I
all
like to profess
hypocritical.
to these clergy that ride in the front seat of the hearse with me is they should consider letting the well-groomed, well-educated parishioners that they have do the homily at the service on Sunday.
Do the what?
The homily.
Oh, the
The
homily.
story, whatever.
Yeah, no,
So,
I-
so
yeah,
they're giving
no.
the gospel of the Last Supper.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they figure Candy, she's a well-professed Catholic. She's going to talk with the priest the day before the service, and she's going to do the homily. Now, what that would do is, all your grandkids would go to Mass, because Grandma's going to do the homily. Her brothers and sisters would go to Mass, because she's going to do the homily.
Well-
I think it would draw a bigger crowd,
That's-
but all the churches go, just a second, John. Would you say that again?
Well, I don't see anything wrong with that idea.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah, and well, you know, because we're old. I mean, you remember what it was like when I was a kid. Nobody participated. The Mass was in Latin.
Yep.
And that changed when I was in college, okay? And now you go to church and all kinds of people are participating, they're lectors, they're cantors, and that wasn't the case 50 years ago.
And there's women.
And the women participate, yes, they do.
There wasn't before.
Yes, they do.
So we asked the question, what do Unitarians believe about Jesus? Unitarians generally believe that Jesus was a great man and prophet of God, inspired by him, but not God himself.
There you go.
They see him as a savior of humanity, but not as a divine in the same way as God the Father. Unitarian Universalists, for example, may view Jesus as a moral exemplar, a prophetic leader, or a compelling teacher. Some also consider him a Jewish prophet, a leader with a mission of reconciliation. And then there's all kinds of stuff which I'm not going to get into unless somebody really wants
Well,
to
he
know.
was a Jewish prophet.
Well, that's what they believe. Well, yeah, true. But there were things that he could not predict or prophesy about because God did not allow him to do it.
Like
So
Powerball.
usually the test of a prophet is that what you predict for the immediate future while you're living comes true. And then what you predict after your death comes true. So you have short term that gives you credibility, and then you have long term. And when you take a look at all of what we classify as prophets in the Old Testament, that's exactly what occurred. They also, they try to say like Nostradamus is a prophet. Well, there's a lot of stuff that he predicted for the future that didn't come true. So therefore,
Yeah, and
that's a false
A
prophet.
lot of his stuff is very ambiguous and very general.
Well, it's up to interpretation and application. So there's, a lot of interest in having somebody be able to tell you what your future is and look in the crystal ball.
People pay money for that, right?
Well, yeah, they do, and they pay money to talk to people that aren't around anymore.
Yes, they do.
And the
like-
question is, can they or can't they?
The
So,
the mediums, right?
yeah. And it's interesting on the radio, sometimes, because I drive a lot, considering the fact that I have
What stations do you listen to?
usually just the Fox News one.
The-
I used to only listen to
What number on the dial is Fox News?
114 when you have Sirius radio.
Oh, you have Sirius in your car?
Well, Glenn wanted it. So, having the different kinds
It's
of
your
things,
car.
having the different types of services like that is interesting. So I can listen to an awful lot of things on Sirius Radio if I want.
I listen to TuneIn Radio.
Well, they have a spa station. So if you really want to have just music that has,
A spa.
yes. So,
Well, I
mean,
get
it's-
news from Texas, Georgia, California. Like a radio station out in California called KFI. Love listening to KFI.
All the
Angeles.
all the radio stations west of the Mississippi start with K,
Yeah, and east is
and east is
W.
W, right? Isn't that how it works?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, before we had Sirius on the van or any of the vehicles, I always listened to WBZ, which is 1130.
That's mostly news now, though.
Well, it always was news.
Oh,
It wasn't
not-
music
not-
at all.
Not years ago.
WBZ
It was when I had a
is
car.
now news on WRKO. When
Yes.
they go to news on WRKO,
Correct.
It's the
You get
WBZ news.
WBZ, that's right.
it's
That's
all
right.
owned by the same candy store.
No, when I was growing up and
I forget the name of the company that owns all
even
of
as
it.
a young adult, the BZ was a regular programmatic radio station. In
It was
fact,
competitive.
you remember Carl DeSouza, don't
Yeah.
you?
Yes.
Yeah, well, Carl DeSouza, it was a friend of mine, okay? I knew him quite well. And you had personalities like DeSouza.
Was he a Concord guy, or where'd you
Yes,
know
he
him?
was.
Okay.
He married, well, he wasn't until he married his third wife. His third wife was from Concord.
He had to be a Protestant too, third time's a charm.
Yes, he was. And, well, he wasn't. No. D'Souza, well, he was what we call a fall-away Catholic, okay? I mean, he was raised Catholic.
Not even a lukewarm Catholic, a fall-away Catholic.
You never heard that term?
I never heard,
Yeah,
have you
fall-away-
heard lukewarm?
Fall-away Catholic is somebody who was brought up in the Catholic Church, but no longer really practices and goes to church and so forth. So that's a fall-away Catholic. Want to look that up? Fall-away Catholic?
Well, I can, but
Yeah.
I looked up something else.
We have all these nicknames.
Yeah.
Good old Carl D'Souza.
Oh, he was one of a kind. He was a great guy. And his wife, his third wife, was very nice. And she was a trained,
She a looker?
very attractive woman. And she was a trained musician. She was a soloist, had a wonderful voice, and sang with the local choral groups and so forth. Very nice people. Very nice people.
Yeah, most people in the media,
Yeah.
when you sit down and chit-chat with them, they're nice people. Enjoy their company.
Yeah.
So one of the things when we were talking about the radio stations and what you listen to, growing up, I grew up in the city of Quincy. My father would always turn on WJDA.
Oh, I remember JDA.
And so I looked it up. I mean, it's easy enough. I love this device. Was based in Quincy, Massachusetts, known for its talk programming, and later adopted ABC Radio's Unforgettable Favorites format. And then it listed the different people here. Don Kent was the one that used to do the weather.
Yep.
So it was really, really interesting. But what is it now? It is a Spanish radio station.
Oh, so they're still the call letters are still being used.
The WJDA
Yep.
is. And then it says that it is, I think it is FM.
Look up a WCOP.
It used to be 1300, wait a minute, it used to be 1300 AM.
Yep.
And now it says
It's
it's
FM.
FM.
Look up WCOP. That was big when I was a kid. I think they were in Waltham.
Well, did you get LLH?
Yes.
Because we had the college radio station,
Yes.
whatever they call themselves. WLH.
That's not what comes up, what is it?
And WCAP, that was Lowell
WCOP.
stuff. Got some comments from the audience.
So just wait a second, it comes up.
First
two
one is
different-
from the fiercely independent news. WBZ is the biggest fake news outlet amongst all the horrible news in the state. Thank you, Mr. Sunshine.
Oh, I think ABC is worse. I think of all the three networks, I think ABC is the worst.
Next comment,
Yeah.
a little humor during Holy Week, question mark. Jesus walks into a hotel and throws 3 nails on the front desk and asks,
Oh, no.
can you put me up for the night?
Oh, that's bad.
That's bad.
That is bad.
Oh, boy.
Well, now you can tell it's a live show, right?
Here's a guy who he eats meat on Friday. Yep, there he goes.
That was not good.
They said WC, oh, that's PO, not OP.
They don't have COP.
I'm gonna look, I'm looking. An acronym, it's an acronym for a number of things.
Okay.
But it did say that in Boston, WCOP was the call sign for 2 radio stations.
Okay.
WWDJ at 11:50 a.m.
That's-
and WZLX at 100.7 FM,
The first one is the one I remember.
which later changed their call signs.
Right, okay, so that they went out of business. But I remember when I was a kid, and I mean like 10 or 11 years old, so we're talking late 1950s here, was the first time I ever heard Jerry Williams. And he was on WMEX, okay?
How about Woo Woo?
Well, Woo Woo Ginsburg was on MEX, okay?
I loved MEX.
And Arnie Woo Woo Ginsburg. You know, Adventure Car Hop is the place to go for food that's always right.
You had to
Remember
say
that?
something and you get another burger for nothing.
That's it. And
I think you had to say Woo Woo Ginsburg and you got
Yeah.
a free burger.
yeah, you go in, you say Woo Woo Ginsburg, and yeah, they gave you something free. Was it a
I
free
think you got
burger?
an extra burger.
Okay, all right. He was one of the, unfortunately, he was one of the DJs in the late 50s that got caught up in the payola scandal. You know, they were,
What was payola?
payola was, the DJs would take money from the record companies to play
Certain songs, yep,
certain
yep.
songs and so forth, you know, so that they would go up in the charts. And he was one that was actually convicted, so they suspended him.
Convicted?
Yeah, they were brought up on charges.
That's against the law?
It was against the law, yeah.
It's interesting what kind of chit-chat you have if we don't have
But wait a second now,
formal
if
discussion
I
here.
own a car dealership and I pay Sam TV to put ads on, and Evelyn, she owns a car dealership, but she doesn't give you any money, how is it legal for me to pay you to run my TV ads? And then,
Because it's an ad, and we know it's an ad, okay? That's the difference.
well, now, how about if you commentate, you're the commentator on the ad? Buy my car, this is a wonderful thing, it's your voice, it's your show, and you just say, don't forget to buy a Sam Mobile. Sam Mobile's the best. How is that, now, you're not telling us it's an ad, you're just professing that the Sam Mobile is the best car out there. And,
Are we talking, what are we talking
I
about,
think
a conflict of interest
he's
of
talking-
some
no,
I
sort?
think I lost you.
no,
I don't understand where we're going with this.
Well,
there are a lot of ads that you hear, you have no idea it's an ad. Now, on children's television, broadcast children's television, not internet children's television, they have to tell you this is an ad coming up.
right.
But on internet TV, my grandson, he goes from show to show to show, and they'll have an ad on about cigarettes or whatever the heck they're, not cigarettes, but they'll have an ad on for a toy or something, and they don't say this is an ad.
Well, sometimes there's small print that you can see on the screen that says it's an ad, and what
Like
is,
a 3-year-old can read this.
the 3-year-old doesn't really
Oh,
care.
Papa, thank you, this is an ad, you know.
Three-year-old can't buy anything, presumably.
No,
Oh,
but
yeah?
they can ask.
With Nana's iPad, he can buy a lot of stuff, and he
Well, that's what
knows.
happened to us, remember,
Right.
and it's so funny because I watched him Tuesday, and he said, I can't have Grandpa's phone because Mummy says I can't order any more toys.
That's good.
I think he got the message.
You got the message.
It was so funny. And then when I said something about my phone, it was the same thing. So whatever it was, it hit home. No, and there
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
anything else, it was just
Little
a
kids-
discussion.
Little kids don't understand, the concept of money and having to work.
There's big kids that don't understand the
Well,
concept
that's
of money,
true, that's true.
which I'm not going to get into some of the more recent discussions
I can
I've
I
had.
remember when my oldest daughter was about.
Excuse me.
My oldest daughter was about 4 or 5, and she wanted something, whatever it was, and was asking for it. And I said, well, we can't do that. And she said, why not? I said, well, because we don't have the money. We can't afford it. And she says, well, go down to the bank and get some, right? I mean, that's a 4-year-old's understanding, right? Just, well, banks. I mean, I was impressed that she knew about banks at 4 years old. She said, go down to the bank and get some money, Dad. What's the problem, right? I wish it were that easy, right?
Yeah, a lot of people, they don't
So,
understand it.
Yeah.
But that's like with an awful lot of things, without getting into details of something going on recently, is that the concept is, I will get what I want, but without understanding what the consequences might be when you get it, or what you have to do in order to achieve getting something or having something in your life. So, people will look, like for instance, I buy a house, but a lot of people don't realize the expenditures and the maintenance that goes along with it. And then they're surprised, when all of a sudden, you get a bill for electricity and gas and different things, and they're going, oh, we didn't realize that we were only figuring X amount of dollars for, the mortgage and or taxes.
It's actually worse than that, and this is a true story.
Excuse me.
Friends of mine years ago bought a house in Groton, Mass.
Groton?
Groton.
Oh, yes.
So-
They don't have exhaust fans in the bathrooms out
No,
there.
no.
either.
Well, that's part of the story. Okay, so
Old houses don't.
well, this was a new house.
Evelyn, you don't get it.
They had they bought a piece of property and had a house built. I tell this story and I still don't believe it. It sounds incredible. They buy a house, they have a house constructed. They did not realize that they had to put in a septic system and a well, because Groton does not, well, the center of Groton is sewered, okay, but the outlying parts are not. And they had no idea, because where they lived, they had municipal water and sewer services, so they had no concept. And they had to do a well and septic, so they had no idea until the house actually started to be built, right? And I was just shocked that anybody would invest that amount of money without at least, having an understanding of what was going on, So people buy houses and they don't know that they're on wells and septic systems, apparently, which is incredible to me. But
Well, people don't understand when you flush the toilet, it really goes to the river.
I think you're right. A lot of people don't know what happens,
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's that topic or some other topic. People
don't know how things work, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right. And it's a problem, because it means you can't really understand. If you don't understand how something works, then you don't know. And I mean, we can transfer this subject over to the political situation. So if you hear something on the news, and the news says, well, such and such happened, and you have no understanding or background in the subject that they're talking about, you're just going to accept what you've been told on the news. And that's a problem. That's a problem. So,
Well, I think there's a lot of problems
yeah.
with regard to that. And you can see that we'll talk about the lies that are being promoted about the Supreme Court decision on the undocumented, illegal alien, whatever you want to, migrant that was sent
Garcia?
sent to El Salvador. We're not going to talk about that right this second. But I mean, I'd rather, talk about all of the peripheral, and at 7, we can go into that conversation. But I just can't believe people don't question anything. They don't ask anything. And they're not thinking any way, shape, or form, long range.
They're not interested in the facts. They already have an opinion. They already have a world view of how things work. And they don't want to hear anything that contradicts their world view. That's the problem.
Why would you want to?
They're not interested in the facts. They're not interested. If you believe that President Trump is the devil incarnate and everything he does is evil, then you don't want to hear anything that contradicts that narrative, okay? And on the other side, if you think Trump is the savior, then you don't want to hear anything that contradicts that narrative, all right? And that's the problem. That's the problem.
All right, so where I wanted to go with the, when you mentioned the raw sewage, there was, in all the driving that I do, like I said, I do listen to news, and I thought I'd do a little bit of research about it because it's extremely concerning.
We're researching sewerage, okay, good.
Well, no, it had to do with what the topic was.
Oh, all right.
The topic was the raw sewage from Mexico going into the Tijuana River, and then it ends up out in the Pacific Ocean. And California, we have a naval base in San Diego, and they
Yes, we
can't
do.
train in the ocean because of how dangerous the health aspect of it is coming from Mexico. And this is not a new thing. Basically, it's been happening for 30 years. Why they've allowed that and why any leadership in this country has allowed that is beyond me. And it says...
Well, how do you stop sewage that comes from another country and flows toward your shores? How do you stop that?
There's sewage treatment systems, and we have one that will treat stuff, but it's so old, they're trying to figure out how they can
But
upgrade
we're talking
it.
about stuff coming from Mexico, not...
Yeah, but we can definitely have the water go through or we have a plant that it can go through, but it's not upgraded. So where is...
Oh, we have the same problem here in Lowell. The sewage treatment plant is out of date, and it's at capacity.
Yeah, and you got to throw money at it.
Right.
And I sent an article. Maybe John can take a look at that. I sent an article like at 5:15 this morning dealing with Lowell. I thought it was an
go have a
interesting
look.
article. Yeah.
Lowell sewer?
No, had to do with. It was very positive. It had to do with Lowell economic development.
Oh, good.
But we also have NBC. I mean, this isn't just Fox, Reuters. There's all kinds of stuff that the different ones that they have. So they've got $400 million awarded for a plant that treats raw sewage from Mexico. So we're trying to treat it in the Tijuana River Valley. But the problem has to do with, there's beautiful beaches, but you can't go out in the water because of the E. coli, because it's raw sewage.
Yep.
And then they're also dumping toxic chemicals in there. So,
Well, back in the 50s and early 60s, that's the way Boston Harbor was.
yeah, and think about
Now
how
there's
much.
fines. There's fines for dumping stuff.
Oh, God, yes. Very steep fines.
But we have a federal government that don't do their job. They don't
Trying to
ride
think of
down the
what some
river
of
and say,
these-
look, why is this green coming out of the water here?
I mean,
Well,
you have.
the state also is involved in that as
They
well.
don't do their job, Sam.
Well,
Well, it's called follow through.
that's certainly true.
Well, I have a job I can't be fired from. That's a good government job. You can't be fired. They'll tell you, good luck with that.
But if you listen to the national corrupt media, every single federal employee is absolutely essential and cannot be gotten rid of, right? That's what they're telling us.
Well, when prior presidents got rid of federal employees, nobody complained. It's
Nope.
the Democratic media.
Well, one of the reasons that they say that there's an issue as far as the raw sewage is that there's been such an increase in population in Tijuana
That would do it, yes.
that they can't keep up with it.
More people, more
Right,
stuff.
and of course, they're not doing what Chelmsford did, was put a moratorium on certain types of building because of the sewer aspect of things. Anyway, so Congress approved $300 million in funding to expand and repair the project in 2021.
Now, where is it located?
San Diego.
Oh, in San Diego.
It's in
okay.
that, it's
right.
in Southern California.
That's a nice part of the state.
Well, it isn't with
climate-wise.
regard to this.
No, but climate-wise. it
Yeah,
is.
and an additional $250 million in 2024, well short of the $900 million needed to repair and expand it. And then they said that 34,000 people swimming at San Diego's Imperial Beach next to the border get sick each year from norovirus, one of the many illnesses that can be that they can get from the contaminated water. And I mean, the numbers are awful. But the Navy SEALs train, and they said that they can't train there because 75% of them, gets really ill.
This says, how about the EPA? They should be outraged.
You have heard nothing from EPA.
And
That
you
was
won't-
my first
and you
thought.
won't.
Page 2. Everything looks easy on TV. They
Oh, I'd
build
like to talk about that.
homes. They build homes and solve crimes within an hour with commercials. It's all rainbows and unicorns. And the
There's-
last one, grand slam, Evelyn. The kids today do not understand the value of anything. Most of the problem is parenting. Well, where is parenting school?
There isn't.
Well, we've talked about that before on this program, and a lot of people have their own parents that they look at and say, I don't want to be like that, and then decide to do something different with their own children.
Or
But
they do the same thing.
that's correct. Or they do something. Well, anyway, or they go to an extreme because of how they were treated. They use them as a role model, or somebody else as a role model. You may look to friends, you may look to family, you may look to your friends' families, and all that stuff. I know that my sister and I have had different conversations, and our next door neighbor had a very different parenting style than our mother did, and her thing was, she didn't really care whether there were dishes in the sink. If the kids wanted to go to the beach, well, let's go to the beach. We can always clean up the dishes in the sink, but we can't always go to the beach. And so
That's true.
it was a very different philosophy. One of my friends with her kids, as far as housework and all that stuff goes, it was, hey, take the kids outside and play. I can always do the housework. It'll always be there, but my kids will not. So everybody has different philosophies with it. Now, I knew my kids weren't going to always be there, but I always had enough energy or enough time to be able to have things organized, at least with them growing up, because
But you get them to help. That's the key.
Well, you have to
Yeah,
assign chores.
exactly.
And you have to, ones that are age appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And then, certain responsibilities. You can't shirk your responsibility as the adult. If you have a pet, you cannot say to the kid, the dog's your charge, and then the dog starves to death. I mean, you have to be on top of it to make sure,
Right.
and
But that's true of anything.
as any overseer would,
Right, if
to
you-
make sure that
If you have an employee.
everybody's
yeah,
doing their
If you have
job.
an employee working for you, you gotta check every so often, make sure that employee is doing what they're supposed to do.
Right, so, and then you can also assign a value, so you have an allowance. And then, depending upon what type of family you have, you can say 10% of whatever you earn, you can give to Sunday school. And you can go in that direction. Parenting school was, if you don't do what I say, then you'll be in trouble.
Well, what's trouble?
Well, that depends on your,
varies.
that depends on your parent. Now,
Right.
these are topics that I'm very familiar with. There was an article that I read the other day, and it said, if you had the following phrases, if your parent, your mother or father used them, then you had a very poor parent.
All right, so what were the phrases?
Well, I don't remember all of them, but one is, do it because I said so.
Oh, that was my mother, big time.
Okay.
Said it all the time.
Right, yeah, be seen and not heard.
Oh,
Don't talk back.
Yep, okay, keep going.
Yep, and.
Oh, I had rotten parents based on what you
Well,
said.
so did I.
Go ahead.
So did I. And, do it because I said so.
Yep,
You know, all of the ones that they
Yep.
had were the standard phrases that my mother used.
that must have been a 1950s thing, right?
It could have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it could have been that.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that was, well, basically, when I grew up,
Your opinion is not needed.
well, that's, when I grew up, my parents were older when I was born, so they were 39.
Oh, that's
So-
older.
So really, well, especially back then, okay? So really, I was brought up the way a child would have been brought up in the 1930s, okay? Because my parents were older. And I'll tell you, children were not people. You didn't have an opinion. It was never, I don't ever remember, ever one time growing up being asked, what did I want for dinner?
Oh, no.
Oh, my God, are you kidding? What is this, a restaurant? No, I mean.
And you could ask all you wanted for Christmas, but you got whatever it was that they could afford or they thought you needed.
Your opinion was never solicited as a child.
Well, I will tell you, my opinion isn't solicited now. My mother's going to be 104
Well,
a week from Sunday.
Well, that's because you're the child, right? So, you know, she doesn't.
She's still amazed that I'm 73. She looks at me and she goes,
How old are you
You're
again?"
how old?
Yeah,
And my sister's going to be 70, and it's like, really?
that's funny. When my father got older, he would not remember how old I was. So that must be a thing. I'm not there yet. I still know how old my daughters are.
Right, well, I was firstborn, and my mother was 30. Now, you're not firstborn, so that delays.
I'm third born.
Right. So if my mother had had a third child, she would have been in her late 30s. Because she had my sister at 34.
Yeah, see, that's old back then.
Well, it was. I mean, they were amazed that she even got married, because when she got married, she was 26, and that was old
Yes.
to be married.
Yep.
But as far as parenting styles, I think that they said that there was 3 types of parenting styles of what it was I learned. Somebody else, if you have a different opinion, please share. There was authoritative, authoritarian, and permissive. And
Say the first two again?
authoritative
Okay,
and
authoritative.
authoritarian.
Authoritarian, all right.
So my mother was the authoritarian. My way or the highway.
Exactly. That's what
Okay.
that means, right.
So I have one sister, and we have 2 different parenting styles. Mine was authoritative. My sister's was permissive. So we
Okay,
went in different directions.
So she reacted to your parents and said, I'm going to go in the total opposite direction. That's what
Right.
your sister did.
She would not classify it as permissive. I did, because it was so different than mine, and
Right.
it wasn't my mother's. So there's different styles, and you learn different things like that if you want to read books about being a good parent. And that's what I did. And the church that I was attending,
Was
you
it
had-
a Lutheran church?
no.
What kind of church was it?
It wasn't Unitarian.
And it wasn't Unitarian. There were different ones. Some of them were non-denominational. And the different churches, because of the number of younger people, you would have Bible studies, and then you were able to go different places in the different, I can't remember what you would call them, like Christian conferences or something. You could have themes.
Retreats?
Like retreats. And you could, but it wasn't a retreat. So there's a place called Word of Life in Scroon Lake, New York, upstate. It's still there at Scroon Lake. I have no clue. I'm trying to think, like 45 years ago or something, I went.
You can
You could
tell
tell-
good parenting from the kids that are respectful, not entitled individuals. Well, that's certainly an indication of good parenting.
Right, so anyway, there was this one particular thing. They're very conservative. But in the summertime, you could go up for a week and there'd be a theme. You could, there may be somebody talk about prophecy. There may be somebody talk about, I don't think it would be politics. But I mean, one of the ones that they had different people that talked about raising children. And because we had like a 2-year-old, I said to Glenn, and we had contact with this through my parents, because they found out about it through somebody else, and they would go up for their foliage weekends, and it was like having church 24/7, which is fine if you want to do that. I had no problem with that. But we went on that one, and it talked about, you would go to the different lectures. There was breakout sessions, discussions, and it dealt with that. And then and then there was Dobson, who is from Focus on the Family. And he wrote a lot of books, and there's a lot of different things out there with regard to Focus on the Family. And you read all of this stuff so that you can try to formulate how you would like to bring up your children. And it's not that you beat your children into submission. You want to teach them. You want them to learn about things, and you want them to learn about the consequences of their actions. And sometimes you allow your children to make mistakes so that they can experience the failure, or they can experience the consequence of what it was that they did, as long as you're not killing the kid, or they're not going to end up in the hospital, obviously. You have to pick and choose. But there's a lot of stuff. Dobson also wrote books on the strong-willed child, what you can and can't do, and tough love. There's a lot of stuff out there that I read because I wanted to know how to be the best parent. And I took it very seriously. Most people don't.
Oh, no, they're flying by the seat of their pants.
So if I was going to be a stay-at-home mother, I was going and have it as a career, then I used the same principle that if I was going to be a teacher,
You wanted
I
to
would
inform yourself.
Yes, I wanted to be
Right.
educated. I wanted to know everything that I could about
But
parenting or raising children or understanding their personalities, so that when you understand their personality, then it isn't as if I had a cookie cutter form of approach either.
No,
I
because
had
the
3
kid-
children,
they're all different.
3 different
They're all
personalities.
different.
So
Right.
Ev, any of your kids ever been arrested?
No,
Any of your kids ever any kids out of wedlock?
wait a minute, ask the last one. I don't want to share some of this stuff on the air.
Any of
Well,
your-
I mean, you're up there like I'm the perfect.
I'm not the
Oh,
perfect
I-
parent, I made a lot of
I am
mistakes.
the perfect parent.
No, I didn't say
studied-
that.
No, I'm just mimicking you. I studied.
I tried the best I could, I made
I studied
mistakes.
everything. I'm the perfect parent. So I'm just saying, okay, how did it work out for you? How did it
Okay,
work out?
So let me tell you,
Well, let me answer that, because it's a hard question to ask a parent. So I know the Thorens very well, and I know the boys. So as an outsider, I say that I think Glenn and Evelyn have done a very good job raising their children, because the kids turned out pretty well. Are they perfect? Absolutely
Oh, no.
not. No one is. But
Evelyn's children are all perfect.
no, they're not. But as a
neither of the grandchildren.
holding those kids up to the population at large of their age group, I would say that your kids are probably in the upper tier, okay?
Yes, but so are yours, because
No,
you
no.
took a certain
Well, I think-
level of responsibility.
Right, and I think that.
And you didn't let them raise themselves.
Exactly.
But I'm not perfect.
that's- I
We
think
talked
that's
about
the
parenting
difference.
school.
One at a time, kids.
I think that's the difference. If you're going to be a parent, you have to understand that it's a job, and you have to put some effort into it. And what you hope to do is to try to inform yourself as best you can, and you have to start from the place that you don't know everything, okay? And I think that's the problem with a lot of folks, not just raising kids, but with a lot of things. I mean, people need to understand that they don't know everything, and they're not perfect, and maybe they need some help understanding certain things. And certainly, like John said earlier, there's no school that you can go to learn how to be a parent. It's one of those things that's on-the-job training.
Well, how much of an ingredient of your children's success came from both birth parents stayed in the house? And whereas a lot of our friends growing up, both birth parents weren't in the house at all.
Oh, I think it
Sometimes,
may- yeah.
sometimes you had the wicked stepmother. We all watched that Disney show. And that was, through today, still pretty true.
Oh, sure.
My kid's great. Your kid's terrible. And that's today's world.
Or the
Wait,
parent, or
we-
the parent is, even though they might be physically present, they're not there, okay? They're not paying attention to the kid, they're not mentoring the child, they're just there. And I think that's an issue. You have to put in the time, and you have to do things with your children, and no matter what you do, though, you don't know how the kid's going to turn out, because.
Well, you also don't know how
Right.
grandchildren will turn out either once they get married. And you try to,
One step removed from that process.
that's correct.
And
And sometimes you
limited.
feel like you're a lot more steps. Now, there's another factor, and that is grandparents. My parents, I mean, even though they were over an hour away, I wanted to make sure that my children knew their
Yeah,
grandparents.
very important.
And I didn't actually expect my parents to have a lot of influence, but they did in a positive way. And they
That's
had, my
good.
kids had connections. I
Kids
had,
benefited from that.
right, well, and also as a parent of the kids, I didn't realize how much stuff that they were influencing or what they were doing or not doing until a lot later in life. And, you were talking earlier, about, we just didn't have the money growing up
No, nobody did. Nobody.
to be able to afford the things that you wanted to have. My sister and I had a brief conversation yesterday about a variety of things. Obviously, we it's rare that we have a brief conversation, by the way. And one of the topics had to do with, what kind of gifts did we ever get? We usually got whatever clothes we needed for the year at Christmas.
Yep.
I always wanted to have books. My
I
mother
got
said,
great
go to the
toys.
library.
You didn't get toys?
We didn't get, the toys we got,
Rotten parents. How about you, Sam? Did you get toys?
Well, I got some toys, but I don't think today.
Excuse me.
The toys were limited. No, I did. I got some toys.
Yeah, I got a bike. I got a sled.
Yeah.
I had this helicopter that flew around in circles.
Oh, well, I never got anything that
no, I didn't
sophisticated.
either. And as far as a bicycle goes, so I was the first. We had a tricycle. When I wanted a bicycle, my mother said, well, you had the tricycle. I'm buying the bicycle for your sister. You can share it.
Oh, that's not a good thing.
Sharing ain't gonna work.
So
Now,
the,
let me
the
ask,
kid across,
how old were you when you learned how to ride a two-wheeler? Do you remember?
9,
Really? Oh,
8,
that's
8,
that's
9.
Sam,
late.
Well, I didn't have one. How am I supposed to learn how to ride something if I don't have one?
Sam, how far did you go on your bike?
Oh,
I was very lucky because where I grew up, we had sidewalks, and the police in our town wanted the kids to ride on the sidewalk. Okay, so it wasn't a problem. So because we had the sidewalks, even at age 8 and 9, I was riding a mile from home. Yeah, we all did. But again, that's because we had the sidewalks. If we hadn't had the sidewalks, I would not have been allowed to have done that.
so I had no bicycle, so obviously I wasn't riding one
So were
very
you a
far.
bus rider?
You were in Quincy. That's a city.
Well, that's Evelyn. You had a bike. You could go anywhere you want.
I had a bike from the
No,
time.
but my sister had the bicycle, but we didn't go anywhere. We were on like a hill, and Route 53 was where our street emptied out into.
I would take my bike
You
from
couldn't
here.
ride.
There's a girl, and I have not seen her since grammar school. Her name was Claire Sala. She lived in Tewksbury.
And you rode all the way to Tewksbury on your bike?
Yeah, I thought she was a real sweetie.
Well, then it was worth it.
So
How
we would
old were
ride
you?
out there. Grammar school.
Good exercise.
Grammar school.
No, we didn't do
And
that.
then
That-
later on, when I started seeing my wife, and we dated for like 45 years, I rode to the beach, Hampton Beach, to see her.
Well, we're coming up to 7 o'clock, so we're going to take a short break currently, and we'll see you when we come back.
Okay, we will do that.
Welcome back to City Life. I'm EVELYN Thorein. I am your host for the next 58 minutes, and CM Chase is my co-host. Bob Hoey isn't with us this morning. We do wish him well. We know that we've got some different communities that just joined the program. Some of you have been with us since 6 o'clock. We want to make sure that people know that this is an unscripted show. The opinions are our own. They may be somebody else's opinions, but there's no monitor. There's nobody typing up what it is that we're stating. There's no delays, and hopefully there's no swearing and saying things that we shouldn't say.
Oh, we would never do that.
Oh, no, not at all.
Happened several times yesterday, but
I mean,
did
luckily it wasn't the first. I finally corrected the person, and
Are you swearing?
they were using the S word.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, that's almost today. That's almost not a swear,
Sam,
right?
the Lowell Wizards are looking to kick us off.
So, okay, so that would be considered
Well,
inappropriate.
you do anything, you're never coming back. Okay, fine. My mother-in-law has a side of the house, her house that says you can do it at Nana's house. My wife has that in the kitchen.
I see that.
I don't have that. So we were talking about parenting styles and different things in the first hour, and just to conclude where we left off at 6:59, we were talking about getting gifts and different things at Christmas as we were growing up, and both Sam and I, we didn't come from a lot of money. There was limited amounts of things as far as gifts go. At Christmas, and usually my sister and I got clothing at Christmas. On occasion, you might get a book.
Yeah,
You
I got
might get a
books.
game, something that the whole family could participate in. I remembered, I think that the last things that I received was like paint by numbers, those types of things.
I
that-
always wanted one of those, and I never got it.
Oh, too bad I gave them away. I could give you one of the ones that my mother gave me about 45 years ago.
Somebody
'Cause
who has
I
zero,
kept 'em.
zero, as somebody who has zero artistic ability, I mean, I have trouble drawing stick figures, okay? I always wanted to learn
that doesn't tell you how
how
to,
to
that doesn't
paint and draw. But I
teach you.
figured, as a kid, I figured paint by the numbers would at least be a place where I could start, but I never was
I
able
love
to
that
get-
paint by the numbers.
Well, what's interesting is when you go into antique shops or you go into consignment shops, there's a lot of those that's there. So apparently they're collectible. But I have the ones my mother did. So I think I have probably 3 or 4 of them, and I didn't give them away.
You want to read, this is kind of late.
Yeah. There were big families back in the 60s and 70s, putting food on the table, clothes on the back, and a roof over the head were the essentials. That was also a time when the IRS could ruin your life with ease.
They still can.
But it was also, and I would say the 50s.
Too tight on the mic.
What I would also say is, in the 50s, usually women didn't work.
Yeah, a lot of one wage earner families back
Right.
then. Right.
And my mother did go back to work in the 60s.
My mother was always home.
No, my mother wasn't. And so when I was, I'm trying to think
And
of what year
we
it would
walked
be.
everywhere.
I think
Jeez,
it was
we
like
walked downtown.
But how many kids, John? In your
6.
Oh, well.
Yeah, and we
okay.
only had the 2. And part of the reason I had 2, there was only 2, according to my mother's philosophy about having children, she had 2 girls. She didn't want girls. She only wanted boys.
She didn't want a third girl.
So she didn't want a 3rd girl. If she could have been
How did I know that?
Yeah, if she could have been guaranteed to have boys, she would have had more children,
There you
and that
go.
that was the end of that.
She
That's why there was
wanted a
only
boy.
2, and my
Okay.
mother was the last of 10, and we weren't
Ouch.
Catholic either, and so
No,
when
you didn't. They didn't have cable.
well,
Once cable come out,
I think there's a lot of other things we can talk about too, but and then my grandfather was one of 9.
again,
And-
before cable.
And so, you can take a look at the children of those children, and they didn't have big families either.
Sam will like this one.
I remember getting a bike for Christmas without a helmet. Oh, yeah, we never had helmets. Never.
Those are for sissies.
The helmets didn't come in until relatively recent. Listen, when I played hockey, I played ice hockey in high school, and we didn't have helmets. Okay? The helmets didn't come in until the mid-'60s.
Well, you would know. I wouldn't know because I didn't do any of that. So anyway,
No.
to go back,
So-
as far as those gift things go, because this is the conversation I'm trying to relate that my sister and I had. My sister always wanted trucks. She loved to play with trucks.
Did she get any?
No.
Oh.
But she played with the trucks because there were 2
She
boys next
stole
door.
them from the
No, she
neighbors.
didn't. She just played in their sandbox. But and then I always liked all the dolls and all the different things like that. The irony is the fact that today I like to have
You like the
all
trucks?
the construction stuff. Okay, and she has the design.
Does she
designer
drive a
shoes.
truck now? She have a pickup, or what's she got?
No, she's got an SUV. So, she likes she knows how to do everything. She knows how to paint. She knows how to do stuff. But if she has her druthers, she'll pay somebody to do it. And I just happen to like to
The
do it.
amazing thing your sister did not do was put a skylight in her house
In Florida,
in Florida.
it's a little
Because
hot.
She got stuck in the attic.
I would
Yeah, I
not.
remembered that part.
And I'm there like,
That's why your brain.
what the hell goes through her mind?
Well, I
You
think
get stuck in
panic.
the attic once and you say, so this is, I'm putting a skylight in, and that's what's going to happen.
Right. Well, it's irrelevant now. But what I was trying to get at, there's several things I'm trying to get at here. The
We got time.
sheer fact that she played with trucks didn't make her a boy, and the sheer fact that I like to have all the construction stuff doesn't make me male either. So we are secure in who we are as for identity because there was never any other choices. And I'm not going to go off onto some bunny trail on that part, but it was nice to if my uncle and his future wife would give us dolls. And I remember that I think I was 8 or 9, and the doll that I used to have on my bed was no longer there. And I said to my father, "What happened to the doll?" "Oh, I threw it away." "Why?" "You're too old for dolls." I was like 8 or 9. I had one baby doll.
Well,
So I went and I got it
yeah.
out of the trash and I said, can I decide when I want to get rid of this, please? I said, it's only sitting on my bed. Now, my father came from a farm, didn't have toys because they had no money. And when they got gifts at Christmas, it was an orange. It was something that was,
Useful.
yes, or something very unique that they didn't raise on the farm, but it did cost money. So it was a very different philosophy. We won't discuss my mother's gifts or non-gifts because she never has shared with us anything about Christmases and still won't when I ask. But I know that she had plenty of clothes. And one of her sisters helped outfit her because she didn't have children at the time. So there's a lot of interesting things that you can take a look at that today's kids have no clue how to do without something. And if they don't get it, then they get really angry about it, or they feel deprived. Or you give them something and it isn't quite what they want. So now they have to go to some psychiatrist because it has affected how they think. And I really have issues with that. So that being stated, one of the things that we were going to talk about this morning had to deal with the spin and lies and deception that some of the media has relative to what the reality is.
Some of the media.
Well, it's most
All
of
the
them.
media.
Well, to a certain extent. But Sam had texted that he had read about the Supreme Court ruling, and you said it was Garcia, right? The
Well,
guy
it's more-
that they're...
Yeah, it's more than the Supreme Court ruling. So the case is the...
I'll turn it over to you.
What you've seen on the news over the last 4 or 5 days, you've seen this gentleman who was sent to El Salvador incorrectly, and now the courts have said he's got to be brought back. So there's a whole set of case law behind this situation. Gentleman's name is Garcia, and the case that was brought by the government in this is Nome versus Garcia. So Nome, Christy Nome, she's the Secretary of Homeland Security. All right, so that's the legal framework. So what you've heard, this is what you've heard from most of the media. Okay, this is what the media has said. And they're talking to an audience, 99.9% of whom know absolutely nothing about this case. Okay? So what you're hearing from the media is this gentleman was taken off the street and incorrectly deported to El Salvador. Okay, you've heard that, right?
Yes, I've heard
That's the story from the media.
I have one question for this guy, but when you're done your
Okay,
story.
so that's what you're hearing from the media. So the federal government erroneously snatched this fellow off the street, put him on a plane to El Salvador. He is now in El Salvador. The legal system on behalf of this gentleman has obtained a judgment in the local district court that says, well, that was done in error because there is a withholding order on this guy that he could not be deported to El Salvador, all right? And as far as that story goes, that's actually true, okay? So...
One of the few parts about
Okay,
it.
well, let me finish, all right? But what the impression the media is trying to create is that the whole thing was a huge error, that this gentleman, Garcia, was living his life and doing nothing wrong, not charged with any crimes recently, and they came and they grabbed this guy and they sent him to El Salvador, and they had no authority to do it. And not only did they have no authority to do it, there was a withholding order in place that said they couldn't do it, all right? And this is just a horrible thing, and the federal government needs to, own up to the fact that they don't know what they're doing and so on and so forth. So that's the narrative. So the average person watching the average media report says, my God, they're running amok. I mean, they're just grabbing people off the street, they're throwing them on airplanes, and they're sending them places they shouldn't be. All right. Now, there is an element of truth to that. However, that's not the whole story. So you listen to something like that and you say, boy, that's pretty bizarre. So what are the facts? So we have to start with 2019, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing because it's too long of a story, so I'll keep it as short as I can. This fellow Garcia was picked up by the local police in Maryland on a loitering charge. They found out that this guy was an illegal immigrant, so he was here illegally in the country, should not have been here, okay, which, remember, that is a crime, all right? He was here illegally. At that point, the locals turned him over to Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement, ICE, okay? They took him before an immigration judge. Now, this is 2019, remember, all right? They bring him before the immigration judge. The judge makes a finding that this gentleman is a member of MS-13, which is a gang, okay? A very violent gang. So there was sufficient evidence presented at that hearing to convince the judge that this person was MS-13, okay? And again, I'm going to abridge the story a little bit. So that decision is appealed by Garcia. The appeals court did not overturn the ruling. So the appeals court agreed that this guy was MS-13. Now, don't forget, he's still illegal. He's still here illegally. So now at that point, we've got a guy who's here illegally, who has been determined to be a gang member of MS-13 based on evidence submitted to the immigration court, all right, looked at by two separate courts and sustained, okay? At that point, Garcia decides, well, I guess that's not going anywhere. I'm going to apply for asylum. He puts in a bid for asylum. That is rejected, okay? Now, again, this is all part of the legal system. All right, he's gone through the legal system, and he has struck out on all these on all these cases. So the end result of all this is there is an actual order of deportation issued. Okay, the immigration judge says this guy needs to be deported. Now this is a matter of record. This isn't conjecture. This actually happened. Okay, deportation order is issued. Garcia comes back and says, okay, that's fine, but please don't send me to El Salvador, because if I go there, my life is in jeopardy, and I won't get into, what the problem was, but it was sufficient enough where the immigration judge says, okay, I'm with you. You can't be sent to El Salvador. That's the withholding order, okay? So you've got an immigration judge issuing a deportation order, which still stands, and then you've got a withholding order. You've got two things, okay? So the upshot of that is, if you take those two things together, what that means is the guy can be deported, and should be, he just can't be sent to El Salvador. He can be sent to another country, if you can find one that'll take him, okay? All right. Now, you don't know any of what I just told you from any of the media reports, do you? You don't know any of that.
Well,
Okay.
it was on Fox.
Okay, well, yeah, but they put a
All
little...
of this,
But
all
they did put a little spin on it,
Can I ask you a
okay?
couple of questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Garcia, how old was he when he came to this country? Did they ever say what year? Did his mother take him by the hand and bring him here when he
Oh,
was
no, he
4?
was an adult, a young adult when he came here, yeah,
So he came here by himself?
yeah. So...
Okay, now do you know if he has any relationship at all to Sergeant Garcia, the guy on Zorro?
What, from Zorro?
Yes.
I don't know.
Well, see, he might want
We'll have to we'll have to
He might
do-
want to use that. You know, my uncle is
I'll do
Sergeant
some
Garcia.
research into that. We'll find out.
Thank
if-
you. I
So-
love Sergeant Garcia.
Okay, so here's the thing, all right? And this is my opinion based on reading the entire briefs of everything that was submitted legally for this case. The government did screw up because they violated the withholding order. The guy should not have been sent to El Salvador because that withholding order still
Do
stands.
you
So,
expect there'll be an investigation as to what happened, Sam?
I
Or
think
just
they,
let it all
yeah, I do, but I think they already know what happened.
They'll all just let it, nobody gets
Yeah.
fired.
Okay.
Stanley
Yeah, well,
shouldn't-
actually, that's not true.
Stanley, you shouldn't have arrested the guy. Yeah, I know.
Well, I won't say it's not true because I wasn't there. Based on what I heard on one of the media outlets, the person that was managing that particular case and issued the order to put this guy on the plane and bring him down to El Salvador,
Yep.
he either was unaware of the existence of the withholding order or just decided it didn't matter. And he has been, we are told by the media, whether it's true or not, John, we don't know, but what they have said is, yes, this person has been disciplined. Okay, hasn't been fired, but he's been disciplined, okay?
But there's another piece,
So,
when he talked, just hold that
all
thought
right,
for just
go
a
ahead.
sec.
Yep.
When we'll get into the Supreme Court thing in a second. So staying on the person, okay, who's here illegally.
He's here illegally.
Sergeant Garcia's nephew.
Garcia's
He
nephew.
marries an American citizen, he has children, and she pulls restraining orders on him because of abuse, physical
And her
abuse.
new boyfriend's a cop.
Okay.
I don't know anything about that,
But-
I
but,
just tossed that in.
yeah.
But the
So
problem,
that's not, wasn't out there either.
so the issue to me is, so my conclusion is the guy shouldn't ever been here in the first place. He came here illegally, so that's a violation of the law. There is a deportation order outstanding against him. He can be deported, but there's a withholding order that says he can't go to El Salvador, okay? So that's where it sits. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Supreme Court decision. All right, so what the court said, the court said essentially two things. And you talk about spin. My God, this thing has been spun. But again, you got to go back and read the court decision, which isn't very long. It's only about 22 pages, so it's, it's a short read, okay?
Only 22
And
pages.
it's, well, as Supreme Court decisions go, that's a short one. And
No, I understand. I'm just,
so what the court essentially said, they said two things. They said, look, and this was a 9-0 decision. So all 9 justices, liberal and conservative, they all said, look, you can't just grab a guy and throw him on an aircraft and send him someplace. There has to be a process. You have to follow the legally established process before you actually physically try to remove somebody from the country. So that's pretty clear, all right? And the government's position was, well, the withholding order did not apply because this guy is determined to be MS-13, and the government has declared MS-13 a terrorist organization. And under the designation of being a terrorist, they can be deported at will, okay?
Do they have membership cards?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So the government's position is the terrorist designation of MS-13, given that this guy is MS-13, supersedes the withholding order. And the Supreme Court basically says, no, it doesn't, okay? So government, what you should have done is you should have gone into court. You should have done one of two things. You either should have gotten the withholding order rescinded, or you should have sent him to another country, okay? That's what should have happened. So they moved too quickly. This guy is now in El Salvador. The other thing the court said on a
I
5...
got announcements coming up, Sam.
Yeah, the other thing the court said
almost done.
Everyone's waiting for
the other thing the court said on a 6-3 decision, they said, by the way, you can't judge shop, okay? When these cases come up, you can't sample the district courts and find a friendly judge. You've got to try the case where it sits, in the jurisdiction that it sits. So twofold decision there, okay? So the upshot is, if they do bring this guy back, he's going to be deported again anyway. He's either going to be sent to a place that isn't El Salvador, or the government will get the withholding order reversed. So, they can bring him back per the order of the court, and then they'll just redeport him, okay? So right now, as I understand it, the federal government is fighting this further, and their basic contention is that the terrorist designation situation overshadows the outstanding withholding order, and therefore the action was legal. I don't think that's going to fly, because I think the law is pretty clear on this. They
Can I
did.
do the announcements now,
Yeah,
Sam?
go ahead.
Okay.
So that's the story.
I'm going to do the messages from the audience first. A good question was, what's today's goodies? That's coming up shortly, because Evelyn brought carrot cake today. And you'll be looking at that in a few minutes. Page 2. He's Jerry Garcia's reincarnated
Garcia.
Grateful Dead.
Gratefully dead.
Gratefully Dead.
Forgot about Jerry.
What people should be talking about is the many victims that have been at the hands of criminal gangbangers who don't belong in this country. Well, the reality of the whole issue is many of our neighbors, sadly, are here illegally.
That's true.
And what help is out there for them? Because they're looking over their shoulder, nervous. I have friends of mine living in the community, all the towns, that are not here legally. So what are they, and there's no help out there for them. So I feel bad for that situation. But all that good stuff said, I got all these announcements to do. So
Oh, my God. Better get to it.
Well, that's why everyone loves this part of the show.
Jeez. Takes up a lot of time.
Want me to go slow?
No.
If you want an announcement on City Life, easy thing, send me a text. Easiest thing, send it a text. That's my cell phone number. You can call me up. Whatever's good for you is good for me. Today is a job fair at Lowell High School. If you're thinking of changing careers, take out your fancy phone, put it in camera mode, and register right now. And you can get down to Lowell High School this morning, and you might find a brand spanking new career. They're going to have a bunch of people down there talking about different jobs. Moving right along, Rita Mercy is having a party tomorrow night, Friday, the 18th, 6 to 9 p.m. at the Bunting Club. No, sorry. Yeah, at the Bunting Club, 449 Boylston Street, that's in South Lowell. $10. You can make a check for $100, but
No, she needs
starting
to,
at $10 and going up.
she needs to jack that price up.
Sakari Chow, he's having a party. You're cordially invited to attend that party at the Sampo Meese Restaurant, 450 Chelmsford Street in lovely Lowell, Massachusetts. Tickets start at $50, and seating is limited. And that's going to be on Saturday, April 19th. Neighborhood meetings. There's a neighborhood meeting. These are all the neighborhood groups that the city is aware of, and the police put this slate out once in a while. So the next meeting is actually today, the Friends of Tyler Park. They're going to meet at the Gertrude Bailey Elementary School tonight at 6:30. So if you live up in the Highlands and you want to chit-chat with your neighbors, head over to the Gertrude Bailey School. And then next week, April 28th, the Downtown Neighborhood Association is having a meeting at LTC at 7 p.m., April 28th. John Dakota, candidate for re-election, he's having a party. I'll cinch this up so it fits on the screen. There we go. Committee to elect John Dakota invites campaign fundraiser Wednesday, April 30th, 5:30 to 8 p.m. at Mount Pleasant Golf Club, 141 Staple Street. And donations start at $20 and go up. Moving right along here, today is the 17th. They have a turkey dinner today at the Lowell Senior Center. The only rule is you got to be over 60. You can live in Timbuktu. And they'd love to see you over at the Lowell Senior Center today for lunch. The Lowell Senior Center has lunch 7 days a week, but they're not going to have it on Easter Sunday or Patriots Day Monday. They're not going to have lunch those 2 days, but $2. If you don't have the $2, it's free. Now today, they have an extra extravaganza today over at the Senior Center. They have lunchtime music. Cinch this up so I can see everything. So this is why you're enjoying your lunch today at the Lowell Senior Center. Thursday, April 17th, 11 to noon, Julie Dororio and Jonathan Kessler play jazz, oldies, Motown, show tunes, taking requests. thanks for the Lowell Cultural Council for supporting music at the senior center. So a pretty cool thing that's happening today at the senior center. Go over there, have some lunch, listen to some nice music. What a good idea. Moving right along, if you need somebody to get prayers for,
So it's a good article.
my favorite thing is a place that calls the Monastery of St. Clair, 445 River Road, Andover, Massachusetts. That's their phone number. If you need somebody who needs prayers, just call them up. They even have an answer machine. So you can call them up and leave a voicemail and just tell them who you want them to pray for. They're really great and they're very effective. This gal's having a party, Belinda Duran. Cliff is negotiating with her when she wants to come on City Life. That's a story for another day. But Thursday, May 1st, she's having a campaign kickoff party at Long Meadow Golf Club. And it's from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. That's the best slide I have on this. I don't have a picture of a ticket or anything, but maybe we'll get one later on. Oh, look at this, F. Something in Chelmsford. You want to bring your junk to Chelmsford. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of good things happening here. They have a QR code right down here. And this is going to be a lot of information on this slide.
Recycling.
I just don't see a date. Oh, there
May-
it is,
May
Saturday,
3rd.
May 3rd, 8 to noontime. You can bring all your recycles out there. There's a little bit of a fee. So take your fancy phone out of your pocket, take a picture of this slide, and get rid of that old TV set if you want to. Adrian Kimborowitz Memorial Fundraiser is Saturday, May 3rd at the Bunting Club, 6:30 to 11 p.m. Hope you can make it out there. Points of Light, that's coming up early May. We'll talk about that more next week. This is the one I wanted to get to. Campaign kickoff party at Long Meadow, Monday, May 5th, 6 to 8 p.m. for Aaron Gendron for Lowell City Council. Donations start at $15 and go up. And there's one more announcement I want to talk about today. This is a pretty good program. Out at the Mewis's, a market basket in Pawtuckaville, the brand spanking new one at the end of the Rook Bridge. Thursday, April 17th, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Market Basket, 90 Old Ferry Road, the Lowell Police Department, in partnership with the Market Basket, will be hosting Coffee with a Cop. Please join officers from the Lowell Police Department for free coffee and conversation. So, Ev, that is it. Back
Free
over to you.
coffee, that's a good deal.
Yeah, and you can sit down with a cop and
Yep.
enjoy a conversation.
Now, let me ask you this. Are there any Market Basket stores that are still called Demoulas?
They all are called the most. I
thought-
can be down the beach and I can say to my wife, I'm going to Mewis's. She'll say, well, you're going to go to the new one
Well,
or the
you
old
call
one?
it Demoulas, but I mean, are there any that have, they don't say Market Basket on the, they say Demoulas is what I'm getting at. Are they?
None.
None, okay.
They all say Market
None,
Basket.
They all say Market Basket. But you're right, I call it Demoulas, because that's what it was 40 years ago.
Still is today.
Right, Demoulas. My father, till the day he died, called the refrigerator an icebox. Because when he was growing up,
Well,
they had ice boxes, they didn't have refrigerators. An icebox. But we all knew what he meant, right?
Yes, when my grandmother lived in Quincy, across the street was the ice house. It was a very large building, and there had been like a pond up at the head of the street. Of course, it's all built up. There's lots of stuff. Used to be a Lowe's up there. I don't know what the building now looks like, more housing, and part of the highway. But anyway, they used to, in the wintertime, cut the blocks of ice and bring them back to the ice house with, what did they wrap them in?
Sawdust.
The sawdust, yeah. And that. And so one of my older uncles delivered ice. He had an ice truck.
Well,
So,
yeah.
you have, and I have pictures.
When
So,
I was
of
when
all
I
of
was a
this
kid
stuff.
in the
It's really
50s,
fascinating.
when I was a kid in the 50s, there were still people, the small number of people in town, and some commercial establishments that had ice boxes. And the Concord Ice Company used to deliver, not on horse-drawn, but it was a truck. And I can still see the ice guy with his tongs and the big chunk of ice on his back. They would wear a canvas thing, and they'd come in with those big blocks of ice, yeah.
Mr. McD should send the crew of City Life into space on Blue Origin. What would each member bring up to float around with? You've got to be kidding me. I'm not going anywhere.
I would
I
bring.
don't like to fly. Never mind going
No,
on
I'm
a
not,
spaceship.
I'm not
I'd
going.
bring
into
my
this.
iPhone so I could take pictures.
Yeah, well, you got your drone, so you're all set.
No, but I mean, to be up in space, I mean, you're only up there for like 10 minutes.
I would, as much as I wouldn't like the idea of doing, I would love to be able to go up and see what the Earth looks like from that
Would that
vantage
be
point.
cool?
Yeah, that would be really nice.
What would
to
you
do.
bring with you, Sam?
Phone.
My rosary.
Okay. So, those are our answers. Rosary,
I'll tell you, I'm not, I don't like heights, and I'm not.
Well, I don't particularly
I'm
care
not,
for it either.
And I'm not a fan of flying. I mean,
Especially small
I will
spaces.
do flying, but I'm not crazy about it.
No, I like small, tight spaces.
and hopefully nobody had cabbage the night before.
Had cabbage, yeah. Or-
Look, it doesn't have to be cabbage. It could be broccoli,
Beans.
cauliflower,
Any of those things.
baked beans. Depends on how your body reacts to all that stuff. So one of the things that I also found interesting on the news was the current accusations to the Attorney General of New York.
Oh, yeah, James,
Yep.
don't,
What's he doing?
she,
Okay, what's
Letitia
she doing?
James.
What's-
She
What's
is
the-
the,
so
she,
I-
she is the Attorney General of the state of New York, and she's the one who spearheaded the financial fraud cases against President Trump.
She was the one that initiated it all, and
she-
she ran on there.
And she drove it, and she actually took an active part in the
Is she one
prosecution.
of those rules for thee, not for me?
We don't have to say anymore. You just summed it up. Because what they have found, allegedly, they have found that she herself has committed mortgage fraud. So she, in order to be Attorney General of the state of New York, you have to live in New York State. That is a requirement. Your primary residence has to be in New York State. Turns out, allegedly, she bought a house in Virginia, and she listed on the loan application that that is her primary residence. Can't do that. And apparently, allegedly, the other thing she is said to have done is, in order to obtain, I guess, the loan in a more favorable way, the interest rate and so forth, and this I find rather bizarre and hard to believe, they say that she listed her father as her husband. So the last time I checked, you can't be married to your father, but maybe there's something I don't know.
Maybe you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
How would you know he's your father?
Well, there you are.
He's a nice guy.
We don't know. So,
Old buckaroo, but he's a nice guy.
the upshot of the story, without going into a lot of detail, is that apparently she is accused of doing essentially what she accused Trump of doing.
yeah.
Okay? So the whole thing is very interesting, and I'm wondering that there's probably something behind it, because I'm not hearing anything about this on the mainstream media. Have you? Has this been reported?
I don't listen to
ABC,
the
NBC?
I don't listen to the
Well,
mainstream
you should.
media.
You should.
But one of the things I
Okay.
can do is I can always check on my telephone and ask
I
if
did hear
NBC
some
has covered
babbling
it.
about this yesterday in the car.
I heard it on Fox. I did not hear it on CNN, and I did not hear it on any of the three traditional networks.
I believe I heard it on 1200 AM.
So what's that station? Do you know?
I don't know, 1200 AM.
Okay, but you don't know who the
But
ownership
it's one of
is.
those iHeart Media places.
Okay. So anyway, it's a story, well,
Everything she blamed President Trump of, she allegedly did.
well, not everything, but a lot of it. Yes, that's true.
Did she sleep with Stormy?
I don't think so, but we don't know.
Where's Stormy?
You know what I didn't know until this story broke, because I wasn't really paying much attention to Letitia James, because I just thought she was a deranged person. I didn't realize she's as old as she is. She's 66 years old.
She is?
Yeah, for some reason I thought she was a younger.
She doesn't
What's
look
this gal's name? I gotta
66.
get-
Well,
a picture of her
it depends. It depends on the picture. Yeah, that's
What's her name?
She looks really good.
Letitia, Letitia, Letitia James. Yeah, that's the report I saw. They said she was 66. Now, whether
Letitia
that's
James.
true or not, I don't know. Again, could be fake news.
There's a lot of it out there.
Yeah. So I guess the moral of the story is, if you're going to accuse somebody of doing something, make sure you're not doing it too, right?
This is Letitia here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But but how old is she? She doesn't, if she is that age, she just
And
doesn't,
Sam, you're saying this is her dad?
no,
Well,
that's
no.
her husband,
Well, she said,
or maybe.
who was married to their dad?
Well,
On the application.
On the application, they say that she listed her father as her husband or something to that degree.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, she's in hot water now.
Well, I think so.
Well, she has to
And
prove
the
that she
media doesn't
didn't.
like her. This is the best picture I can find of her. But you can tell the media doesn't like you. If you don't have a nice picture
That is true. I
on
found.
the internet,
Yep.
the media doesn't. Because I mean, come on, she's a beautiful. Here's a beauty. Look at this guy.
I found that out.
Won't go big.
I found that out when I was on the select board. The Lowell Sun had two pictures of me. They had one that looked reasonably good, and they had another that looked like I was the wrath of God. And in my third year, the Lowell Sun did not like me at all. So guess which picture they used to run?
The lousy one.
You're damn right. That's what they did.
Well, the media
Yeah.
shoots video at 400 frames per second. They can make you look fantastic
No, I'm sure.
because they go frame by frame and it's crisp, clear stuff. 400 frames a second. Good stuff. So
She was
you can make
born in
some-
1958. So that makes her 66 or 67.
Okay. Well, she's in hot water.
I guess the media report on her age was correct.
But she doesn't look that.
Well, it
old.
depends on the picture you look
She
at.
looks marvelous.
The one I saw made her, she looked in her 60s.
I think she looks good.
Yeah, no, I think she looks all right.
66?
Yeah. So, but I didn't realize she was that old. But yeah, it could be she's in a little bit of trouble here, you know? So we'll find out.
So what did you think about Bill Maher going to the White House and then telling everybody Trump really isn't the person they think he is? Did you see his interviews?
I watched, and I did not watch the clips. I watched the whole thing, so I know exactly what he said, not what the media says he said, okay? And, yeah,
This is Evelyn's carrot cake.
oh, it looks good.
Yes.
The ingredients?
Well, there's a lot of ingredients.
Magic. This is
Well,
magic.
no, it's not magic. I mean, I stuck some coconut in there because you like it. It's pineapple juice, raisins.
Are there any carrots in it?
Yes,
Oh.
and there's different kinds of
Will be around.
nuts. Yep, I put banana,
It'll be gone shortly.
and then I glazed it with
Well,
a pineapple glaze.
According to Sarah Kurland, carrot cake is her favorite vegetable.
She would like this.
And I like that. I think that's a good way to look at
But
it.
there's nuts in it,
So you don't need to feel guilty eating it, right?
olive oil.
Yeah, there's good stuff in there. Well, you asked about.
You like that?
You asked about.
I thought it was really good.
You asked about Bill Maher, and Maher is somebody I find to be. I mean, he certainly has a political point of view, but he's also, I think, fairly objective, and I think he did two things. I think he did a smart thing, and I think he did the right thing, and I think he did something that most of us should do. And that is, don't just listen to what people say about somebody, actually go and talk to the person and find out for yourself. And I absolutely commend him for doing that. And the report was, as Evelyn said,
Excuse me.
they had quite the conversation, and he said that Trump is a very gracious host. He gave him a tour of the White House, and they had a very nice conversation, and they agreed to disagree on certain things because Bill has a left-wing point of view, pretty much, and so they don't agree on stuff. But the upshot was that, as Evelyn said, Maher said on his show, he said, "The man I saw in the White House is not the man that is portrayed in the media." And he went on to say, I felt frustrated after spending all this time with the president, who really seemed like a pretty nice guy. He said, I felt frustrated that the person I saw at the White House is not the person you see in the news. And he said, if we could only get the guy I met to be projected, if he would only project himself that way in the public, he thought that things would be a lot better. And I thought that was an interesting comment. So I think it's good for people to challenge their own worldview. It's good to talk to the other side. It's good to sit down and try to develop some kind of a personal contact and relationship. But people are not interested in doing that today. They're interested in developing a point of view, and they will not allow anything to disturb that point of view. And I've just lived too long. I've known too many people. I was very fortunate in my professional career, for 30 years of that career, to be involved in international operations, which forced me to deal with people from different cultures. So I have a little bit a different perspective on this. And when I was a young man and I started doing this, of course, I was the typical American that thought, we had the only right way of doing things in the world. What I learned over the years is that people in other cultures do things differently than we do. It doesn't mean they're wrong. Now, I might, even after having been exposed to that, I might still think that that's not the way I'd do it, but it doesn't mean they're wrong. I mean, unless they're killing people or something like that. But you have to keep an open mind on these things. And just from a common sense point of view, it's just not possible that a human being, except in very extreme cases, is 100% good or 100% evil. The truth usually lies somewhere in the middle, and I think that's what Maher was trying to get across in his interview. He says, look, what you see, the public persona of Trump, is not what you see when you go to the White House. And I think that was a very important thing. The sense I got from listening to him was that he was very glad that he did that he went and actually talked to the president.
Well,
more people should do that.
Right, but he also said about, in all his years of supporting Democrats, presidents, he was never invited to the White House. Because he wouldn't have probably been invited to the White House if it hadn't been for another individual.
Well, that's true, and you're right. He did say, but he went further than that. He said what you said, but he also said, the time I spent with Donald Trump, he said, I don't think that either. He referenced Clinton and Obama. That's what he said. He said, as much as I supported them and voted for him, he says, I don't think that I would have been able to have the kind of meeting with either of those guys that I had with Trump. Meaning, the way I took the meaning of that was that Clinton and Obama would not have been comfortable with Maher taking that much time on a personal level. That's what I.
Watch mine, or you just catch it on Facebook?
No, I watched the whole thing.
Because I caught it on Facebook. They had a replay of it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at what Maher had to say. But this guy says, Bill Maher will still vote Democrat, although I respect his honesty.
No, I do respect the guy. I mean, again, he's not a knee-jerk partisan. He doesn't automatically take the left point of view just because it's the left point of view, and you have to respect him.
How
for
do you
that.
think he got that by his media outlet? What network is he on?
Well, it's a podcast, so he controls it. All right.
Oh, it's a podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that works. Anyway, so that, I thought that was very interesting. One of the other things coming up, in case people are not aware of it, is that there is a deadline out there for everybody to get their real ID. Now, if you have a passport, you don't have to worry about it. Real ID is getting your license with that special little star on it. And I will definitely look into it because my license
You don't
comes
have
up
it?
this year. No.
You have a passport, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I have a little card passport that I can put in
Yep.
my wallet if I want to.
Yep, that's
So
very
I
handy.
figured if I had that, why do I want to
You don't need
spend the extra money on the other?
You don't need it.
However, since my license does expire this year, I will renew it and get
Mm-hmm.
a real ID. But I wanted to make sure that people understood that.
May 7th, I think, right?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yep, there's articles out there if anybody wants to look that up. You do have, I'm still working on cleaning stuff out. I had moved my mother into long-term care, so I had simple recycling weekday.com is the site. Pick up, I think it was 5, like, big trash bags of fabric-related items.
Now, where are they from? Are they a local?
I don't know. I never really looked to see what they were because they offered a service and I didn't have to worry about it. And they also pick up other things. So it's on simplerecycling.com. And they ask you to put your zip code in there, and then you can pick whatever day you want to have everything outside for them. You have to be able to have the guys be able to pick up the bags or pick up whatever it is that you have there. So, spring's here. Sometimes you wonder if it is because we did have snow, and people are going to be doing spring cleaning. So I'll finish that in a minute.
I want to back up the
The conversation. Yep.
there are a lot of people out there that think they have the real ID. And
They gotta have the star.
They don't. So take your driver's license out of your pocketbook,
See
and
if
if
you
it
got
looks
the
like
star.
this, so if you don't have that star, you're screwed. So you need.
Well,
to
unless
take
you
someone-
have, unless you have a
Hey,
passport.
hey. I can put myself on camera. So if you don't have that star, you can't fly. So you want to go see the grandkids down in Disney World? It ain't happening, baby.
Unless you have a passport. Passport will get you on the aircraft.
Because that's government issued
Right.
also.
Well,
So
I
passport,
understand that when this deadline happens, the passport's not going to help you either. If you don't have that star, you're
No, that's
screwed.
not true.
no, that's, you have,
No.
no.
Passport will get you on the aircraft.
Okay.
The passport will get you
But-
anywhere in the world.
But most people don't have a passport. That's the point.
Well, I was
So
listening to, last night I was coming home late, listening to Dan Ray in the car, WBZ, nice old buckaroo like me and you. And he said people went down to the registry, submitted this stuff, and they think they're all set because the registry official didn't say, you need this, you need that.
They gotta
Let them
have it
walk
so that
away.
it looks like that.
So
he
they
had-
didn't-
he had
they didn't
people
get-
call-
No,
He
they
had people
didn't.
calling his show that thought they had the real ID and said, well, I don't see the star on my license, but I know it got approved. And Dan Ray said, well, how do you know that?
The only way you know is if you got the right
You don't
stamp
have the
thing.
star,
Yeah.
and you need to have that little star.
it's quite a
Right.
process.
It is. So if you are going to get a
You
real,
Look at your driver's license, you gotta have this guy here, back
right,
that one
and if you're gonna go and do that, you can do it through AAA.
Yes, that's what
If you have AAA, because that's what I will do. And that's where I renewed my license 5 years ago.
I went to Acton. actually.
Well, I go to Lowell. So you probably will need an appointment, and you do have to bring proof that you actually are who you are. So you need something like your passport, and you need some bills proving residency. And there's a few, and a birth certificate and the marriage certificate. I mean, you have to have all these things to prove who you
I
are.
think you need an original Social Security card.
Yes,
And that was a problem for me.
Can't be laminated.
yes.
That is correct, and it was a problem for me, and I was embarrassed because people who know me, I have this reputation of being somebody who documents everything and holds on to documents. Guess what? I couldn't find my Social
Yeah.
Security card.
That's part of the reason I haven't gone.
So I had to apply, which I'm glad it happened because I should have it, right? So I had to apply to get an original Social Security card, and I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't a huge deal. Now, I had to make the visit to the office in Lowell, but I had my card within 6 days. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked that it went that smoothly, you know. So,
So anyway, so we have a short time left. In Chelmsford, we have town meeting coming up, not next week, but the week after, April 28th. We'll see if it's one night or 2 nights. There's some interesting stuff that is on the warrant. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that next week.
I'm going to plug my show because I taped a show yesterday, and I don't usually do this.
Who was your guest?
My guests were John Curland, town moderator, and Paul Cohen, town manager, and we talked about the upcoming town meeting, and we talked about the warrant articles. So if you want to have a little bit of a discussion on the upcoming town meeting, watch Chasing the Facts, Chelmsford Telemedia, or
Where is it on?
you can Google it on YouTube. It's up on YouTube. They put it up last night, actually.
And if I want to watch it on regular TV, when's it?
It would be,
You gotta look on the
I
telemedia
think it's
website too.
I think it's Comcast Channel 8 and Verizon Channel 36, I
What
think.
day?
He said what day and what time.
It's on at night at 8:30.
Every night?
Yes.
Cool, huh? So,
Wow.
so anyway, so we have
That's why
town,
people are sick of me.
we have town meeting coming up. Well, I had suggested that you and I do a show where I ask you the questions about tariffs, and we can actually
Yeah,
try
we can do
to
that.
teach people a little bit more about tariffs. It isn't that you sit for 30 minutes.
Yeah,
and
but you know what's going to happen? If we do that, then we're going to get a certain person who posts on Facebook that we're just a couple of arrogant people that think everybody else is stupid. So that's
No.
that's the feedback you're going to
No,
get.
well, you know what? There's always those people out there,
Yep.
and then we're not going to get rid of them.
No,
No, you didn't miss the goodie. He
No.
did have it. It was a carrot cake that had a lot of stuff in it.
it's a
It was so
vegetable.
good, I'm gonna have another piece.
It's a vegetable. Carrot cake is a vegetable.
Yeah, and when I make stuff, I don't put a whole lot of sugar in it either.
Yeah, that's good. I like
So,
that.
Some stuff I thought was going to be super sweet, and it
But
wasn't.
a lot of people do like a lot of sugar, so there you go.
Yeah, well,
Maybe you should make 2 batches, one with a lot of sugar and one without.
well, there's other ways to put sugar on it. If I frosted it,
Yeah, see, I don't like frosting.
and I didn't, I glaze it, and then and the glaze has the unsweetened pineapple juice in it. So it's actually good for you. Usually the stuff I make is.
I will take a
But
piece
anyway,
home.
when I was talking about the spring cleaning, which we saw that there was an e-waste day that's going to be May 3rd at McCarthy Middle School in Chelmsford. There are fees associated with it. You have to go on the PTO website, or, you can call somebody and ask some questions about exactly, what it is. I have some questions. He may show the picture again.
Look at the screen now.
Again,
This is
Yep, you can see the raisins. You can see the
much better focused than last time.
can you? Are those nuts or is that coconut? Or
nuts. Nuts. I put what I had left.
These dark guys.
both?
Raisins.
Raisins. I think I can see
California
the coconut.
raisins. And there may be some flakes of coconut
Yeah, I
in
think
there,
I
and
can
that's
see that.
unsweetened.
Yeah.
So I ground up almonds and walnuts together
Ooh,
because I
that
had
sounds
some
good.
left over.
That's
So I
good.
said, might as well. And there's a banana in it.
Oh, I see the little piece of carrot.
Yeah. see-
Okay, so you know it's carrot cake. It's in there, all right? You got your vegetable in there.
It's gonna be gone.
Anyway, if you are doing spring cleaning, okay, there are a number of things. Like I said, simplerecycling.com is what is in Chelmsford. I'm certainly sure they'll pick up other places. There's donate your clothing or donate your stuff.
Jay says, Evelyn and Sam, enjoy your Easter.
Thank you.
Yes,
You
and-
too.
And happy Easter to you also, and to everybody else. But you have the Wish Project that's in North Chelmsford on Middlesex Street. If you are cleaning out your closet of clothes, they're always looking for things. They are on Facebook, and they do have their website. And if you are in doubt on what you like to donate, please call. You have Household Goods in Acton. They have very limited hours, but Household Goods are also
Are they on
listed.
Are they on 2A in Acton? Where are they in Acton? Do you know?
27.
Oh, they're on 27.
They're on 27.
Okay, all
They're
right,
not hard to find.
okay.
It's all volunteers. They take certain types of furniture. In fact, not this weekend. I don't know if I'll have time next weekend. I do have furniture that needs to go, and hopefully they'll take it. I have a desk. I think I have a kitchen table and chairs. Pardon me? I don't have, why? The trash will take it.
No. In Lowell, on a nice day like today, you got a sofa you want to get rid of? Put it in front of your house. It'll be gone.
It depends on what street you're on. Depends on how much traffic you get.
Oh, you'd be surprised how many people drive by your
Oh,
house.
no, I mean, your street, I would imagine. Stuff
Well,
is
if I
gone,
give
right.
it to Household Goods, which I have given stuff to them, they have clientele that don't have much, or they're trying to set people up in apartments and things, and I don't
It's gonna be a
know.
beautiful day today. I would put free, put it in front of your house. It'll be gone by noontime.
Well, I'm certainly sure the desk will be, because it's in excellent shape.
What kind of a desk?
I wouldn't lug it anywhere. Let one of my neighbors take it.
It's the desk where you can sit on this side, the drawers are over here, and there's a drawer here.
Oh, okay.
It's light wood, and
Like
it's
I-
not
I
a
got-
new desk, it's old.
2 TV sets that are gonna go out in front of the house. They both work, but just, we don't use them anymore.
Well, maybe I'll leave
For the
stuff in front of your
grandkids.
house.
Evelyn, I'm telling you, it's gone.
There's also a place, I don't
On a
know.
rainy day, though.
I don't know the address, but if you have old televisions and you don't want to pay to get rid of them, there is a place, someplace, I thought it was in Nashua, where people actually pay to go in and smash television, so they want television so that people can pay to smash them. That's their business. I thought that was kind of weird, and unique. It's kind of like, you
never
can
heard
donate
that.
dishes to places, maybe that's the same place, that if you have odd dishes, you throw the dishes against the wall, get all your aggression out on that. Well, it looks like that Sunday's going to have good weather. Looks like we're going to have excellent weather on Saturday, maybe some rain.
Wait,
It-
Well, Evelyn, I'm gonna slap your hand here. This is where you wanna bring your TV set. To E-Waste Day out in Chelmsford.
Yep.
And, they're taking TV monitors, bicycles, snow blowers.
$85 for a truckload, that's pretty reasonable.
So, you and I are on the board of directors at Millstream in Chelmsford, and I'm going to go scope out what it is that they've got. And when it says $60 for a carload, I may, be able to get rid of the stuff that's on that second
Use a
floor.
car though, don't use a van, because that's $85.
Good stuff. We got
True,
some
unless I
time.
fill it. Unless I fill it,
That's still a good deal.
I can split the cost with them because there's refrigerators and we have some small. Anyway, everybody have a great day. Stay safe. Thanks for being with us. Happy
Goodbye.
Easter to all that celebrate.
Yep.
Take care.
All a good night.
That's Christmas, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm trying to see who's on tomorrow. Which is coming up quickly.
Well, I better get home to the
Speed of the
Not done
internet.
yet. I'm gonna wait.
Tomorrow we got Ralph Hogan's coming.
Ralph.
That's it. Hey, have a great day. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow we got Ralph Hogan's coming.
Weekday.